Hey readers, welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. I'm coming at you from a different location in my house today. So this is one of the only bookshelves that we have set up. And it has mostly Lisa's. Two shelves are dedicated to Lisa. And then the bottom shelf is my Book of the Month club books, or the books that I pulled before we moved that I wanted to be sure I had easy access to so that I could read them sooner. And guess how many of those I have read? Zero. I have read zero of them. It just goes to show you never know what you really want to read until you're really in the mood for it. We're here, even though it's the middle of the month of May, to talk about my May anticipated reads. And yes, this is a very slow, late video, but I don't know why. I just could not get myself interested in some things in May. So it's been a bit of a trick for me to get my brain into gear. But I've been watching some other booktubers talk about some of these lately, and there's no deadline for you to get these out. Certainly it's your own timeline, but I really am kind of getting more and more excited again, reading a little bit better than I was in the beginning of the month, and really taking a look at when I want to pre-order some of these. I have pre-ordered one at least already. I actually got one of them from Book of the Month as an early release for a May release start date. So let's get started. Okay, the one that I got from Book of the Month, which came out May the 9th of this year, is The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Bramer. This was as I said, a Book of the Month selection. It's a cover that is luxurious to me. I just love these flowers. It's a perfect kind of spring to summer transition read, I think. I've had my eye on this one for a bit of time. It interests me because she is a death doula, and this kind of comes about because one of her teachers died in front of her as a younger person, and so she's always been fascinated with death and with supporting people. So she becomes a death doula, which, if you're not familiar, it's sort of hospice care, but it's like a person who is like a birth doula. It's a person that is there for the whole experience with you and help you to transition from life to death. And as she is beginning this journey and getting really good at this journey, she realizes that she really sees this as a calling. And then she meets a woman for whom the process begins as a journey into kind of sort of a dying wish of somewhere she'd like to go. So it's a road trip that they take together. And I like the premise of this. I did do some hospice volunteer work for a time in my life, but also I have been the recipient of support from hospice care people over time in my life. And I have actually been looking into death doula training lately. So this was kind of is this a sign from the universe thing, or is this just a coincidence? I don't know. But I love the back cover. It says, "Death she gets, it's life she can't quite figure out." And I think what happens in this book, the way the premise is leading me to believe anyway, is that she realizes in her being with someone, as they transition into death, she discovers what she really wants out of her own life. Sounds great to me, and I'm glad that I got this, and I look forward to reading it very soon. Another one I pre-ordered that doesn't come out till the end of the month, but I pre-ordered it on audio through Libro.fm, is Drowning by T.J. Newman, which is a rescue of a flight 1421. Something malfunctions on the flight and the plane sinks into the ocean, and the passengers are trying to survive this terrible ordeal while people are standing by and starting the process of trying to rescue them. And it follows a dad named Will, I think, and his daughter Shannon, who are obviously trapped inside of this wreckage of this plane and trying to stay alive until they can be rescued. I've never read anything by T.J. Newman, but I've recently heard some people talking about him and one of his other novels, which I think is also about a flight, if I recall. This one just, I don't know, for some reason it was I don't know, it called to me for maybe because I was in a little bit of a slump. I was looking for something that would really like be completely like mind bending and fast paced and terrifying. And so I have pre-ordered it. What happened was interesting to me is Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library talked about getting an early release copy from Libro. So I thought I could too. I didn't even look to see if that was a thing or not a thing. I just clicked on it and ordered it. And then it said, this title will be available to you on May 30th. Okay. All right. So May 30th is the day that this one releases, and I may start it on May 30th. We shall see. This book is a departure from my normal genre, although I recently have collected at least one in this fantasy realm. This is called The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. I heard about this through a booktuber's unboxing of a Fairy Loot box in the UK. The cover and the edging and the jacket and all of it was so stunning that I was so drawn in. And then she said, you can't get this in the US. This is only a UK subscription. So I still, though, was intrigued enough by this book to take a look. And it does, I think it was released on May 9th, so I could purchase it now. I think for reasons that will become clear to you in the next few weeks, maybe a week or so, I'm not going to order it, though, until probably June 1st. So I'm going to tell you why I'm doing that soon in another video. But The Book That Wouldn't Burn, I still think is a beautiful cover here in the US. There's nothing wrong with it. So I'm going to read this to you. I don't do this often, but I don't want to do it an injustice. Two strangers find themselves connected by a vast and mysterious library containing many wonders and still more secrets. In this powerfully moving first book in a new series from the bestseller of Red Sister and Prince of Thorns, I've heard of neither one of those before today. The boy has lived his whole life trapped within a book-choked chamber older than empires and larger than cities. The girl has spent hers in a tiny settlement out on the dust where nightmares stalk and no one goes. The world has never even noticed them. That's about to change. Their stories spiral around each other across worlds and across time. This is a tale of truth and lies and hearts and the blurring of one into another. A journey on which knowledge erodes certainty and on which, through the pen, may be mightier, though the pen may be mightier than the sword. Blood will be spilled and cities burned. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why I resist fantasy when it reads in a synopsis like that. So I think this is a must buy for me. And then if it's great, I'm excited that this is the first of what should be 3 books in this series. The Museum of Ordinary People by Mike Gale also comes out May 30th. I've been watching this one for a bit, and I feel like I might want to buy this one. We'll see. This follows a girl named Jess who's having to empty her childhood home so that they can sell it. I think her parents both die, maybe soon after each other. And Jess starts to go through all of their things and discovers a set of encyclopedias that are quite old and maybe possibly rare. So as she tries to find a new place for these encyclopedias, she discovers this warehouse that is called the Museum of Ordinary People, and it is filled with lots of historical objects and just interesting things that she never knew about, and stories about continents and generations and people and events. And the curator of the museum is also quite intriguing, I think, to her. And so she discovers a lot of things about herself, about her family, about the world, and about what things you want to remember and what things you lose along the way, and how we create the future that we want for ourselves based on our present and our experiences and what we discover. So this sounds fascinating to me. It has a beautiful cover, I think, as well. It just looks so nice. And I don't know if it'll be dark or light or something in between, but I feel like just the the tone I get from the different places that I've seen it would lead me to believe that it's maybe a little bit lighter than we think it'll be. Okay, another author I've enjoyed in the past has a new release coming out May 23rd, and this is actually two authors together that write under the name Liv Constantine. They're two sisters, and so they both co-write these novels. And I read The Last Mrs Parish several years ago when it came out. I haven't read anything since that time by these authors, but this one really intrigues me. For one thing, it's set in Washington, D.C., where I lived for a time. For another, I think it kind of has a unique plot. I think it's unique anyway. Maybe not completely unique, but I haven't read anything like this for a long time. Let's just say that. So the characters in this book are Sloane Chase and Senator Whit Montgomery, and they met in DC and they've been newly married, I think. And Sloane has a history of lupus. So lupus is a pretty devastating disease physically, and she starts to have a hip replacement as a result of some of the things that have happened in her body since she was diagnosed. And they hire a caretaker or caregiver to support her recovery after the surgery, and her health begins to deteriorate somewhat mysteriously. So I suspect the caregiver has an ulterior motive. I love the cover of this. I love the setting, as I mentioned, and I really did enjoy The Last Mrs Parish very much. So I would think that this will be maybe an auto buy for me in the month of May. Certainly it will be something that I will plan to read, and it wouldn't hurt me to go to her backlist too and kind of check out some of those. I'd like to read. This one's getting a lot of buzz. You've probably heard other YouTubers talk about it too, and I'm no different in my desire to really take a look at this faster than later. Okay, another book about books. This is kind of a theme for me. Another one that I just cannot wait to get my hands on is No Two Persons, and the author is Erica Bauermeister. I have this written on a little note on my computer so I can remember her name because it's not a common name. Okay, No Two Persons is about a woman named Alice who's had quite a difficult time in some way. It doesn't say what, but she has an event in her life that creates this ability within her to feel like she's ready to write something. And she writes a beautiful debut novel. And after she writes this novel, it finds its way to a number of different characters in this book. One is a teenager who's homeless. One is an artist who is really mad and angry and not creating potentially. A diver who is trying to push himself into a space of a super level of endurance. Let's just say that, I think, is what the premise said when I read it earlier. And so it follows, I think, 9 people in total that are touched by this woman's novel and that have these very different, disparate experiences in life. But for some reason, this novel came to them in this moment. And I just think that that sounds like a lovely experience, and it reminds me of something else, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. So hopefully when you're listening and watching this video, you can help me figure that out, because it really is kind of driving me a little insane. But No Two Persons by Erica Baumeister. This came out May 2nd. And if I do pick this up, this will be a first for me from this author. And the last one I'm bringing to you that really interests me is The Half Moon by Mary Beth Keane. I have not read anything by Mary Beth Keane before, but I have had Ask Again Yes on my to be read list on Goodreads for several years since it came out. So this book is interesting to me, and it's probably a better read maybe it's a better read in the spring, summertime than it is in the winter. So it has a blizzard in it. Yeah. So Malcolm has been working at this bar for quite some time, and he'd really like to own the bar, and the owner is about to retire. And so he's trying to figure out how it is that he could maybe stretch their budget to be able to afford to purchase the bar and own it for himself. It's always been his dream. His wife Jess's dream has really, as a lawyer, I don't know that that is exactly fulfilling her, but her dream has always been to have a child, and they've tried more than once over time, and it just isn't happening for them. So he's really pushing to this next phase of his life as an entrepreneur and an owner of this bar and doing work that he loves. Jess is kind of trying to figure out what lights her up, perhaps. Then Malcolm finds out a kind of a big secret about Jess, which is apparently pretty earth shattering to him. And then I guess around the same time, there's a blizzard that traps everyone and provides a space for them, or maybe creates unexpectedly a space for them where they are alone and must kind of confront some of the things that have been happening and are happening for them. I do think that it sounds like something that I would like. I do know that it doesn't have the highest ratings on Goodreads, but I think it's contemporary fiction. It's really probably a pretty difficult topic, marriage complexities and maybe infidelity. I'm not sure, but it kind of leads you to wonder about that sort of thing, right? I don't know. But just the choices that we make, the choices that are not available to us, and the things that we really are longing to do and sometimes are outside of our grasp. Those are kinds of things that I do love to read about. The ways in which people suffer in silence, or the ways in which they conceal parts of themselves that they don't want to share. I don't know. It sounds really good to me. And so I think I would like to take a look at this. I'm going to put in to read or to win a free Kindle copy and see if perhaps that would happen. I can always get it again on Book of the Month too, I'm sure, if I don't choose another selection for this next month. Okay, so those are the ones that I'm most anticipating. There are tons more. There are a couple of other fantasy novels that I wasn't really sure I would read. There's a curated collection by Margaret Atwood of short stories you might want to take a look at. So there's some other possibilities, but I think these are the ones that I would most likely read or buy for my collection, and hopefully they interest you too. Let me know what is really interesting you for the most anticipated reads. Let me know if you are planning to get any of these, or maybe the ones that have already been released you're already in the process of reading. And as always, thanks for joining me, and happy reading. Bye.